Hi, I'm Kay and we're making a short educational video today for the Yorkshire Beekeepers Association. We're really delighted to have Ivor with us. Ivor used to be a bee inspector. He's now retired and he's very kindly agreed to come and look at our hives over in the Calder Valley and do a disease inspection. So can you tell us, Ivor, why it's important to do a disease inspection?
Well, it's important to do a disease inspection probably twice a year so that you can be confident that your bees are free from any serious disease problems.
Yeah. And what's different about it compared with a normal inspection?
Well, normally you might be more interested in finding whether you've got any swarm cells or whether the queen's there or various other things, whether you need to give them more space and so on. But when we do a disease inspection, we concentrate really just on that aspect.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I think I've always worried that I'm going to lose the queen somehow by not focusing on that. How do you get around that issue?
With a disease inspection, you're going through the hive fairly quickly. You're not spending too long looking at other than the brood combs. So the queen really should be fairly safe.
Okay.
You don't expose the combs for very long.
But I know you kind of shake them, don't you?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
We'll be demonstrating that.
So how are we going to do the inspection then?
Well, I'm going to do it very much as a bee inspector would, who might come to visit you if there was disease in your area. And if you look at the leaflet from the National Bee Unit, Foul Brood Diseases of Honeybees, I'm going to follow the method outlined there.
Okay.
And that booklet is available, you can download that as a PDF file from BeeBase, the National Bee Unit website.
So we're going to go over and do the inspection now and let Ivor show us how to do it. We're going to put our veils on and get on with that now.
Right, well, this is the hive we're going to do a disease inspection on. The first thing we need to do is just have a smoker well lit. You might not need it, but it's always good to have it ready and prepared just in case. It's not a particularly warm day today, so we'll just give the bees a little smoke at the entrance, just a tiny bit, just to let them know we're here. And then by the time we get into the hive, they'll have scented that and hopefully be nice and calm while we look at the bees. So we're going to take the roof off first, and we've got a nice stand here. We don't always have that luxury, so I'm going to place the roof on the stand, and then you've got, of course, a brew box, queen excluder, and one super on this hive. You might have a number of supers. You want to keep the bees as quiet as possible, so if you can, if you've got some help with you and there's more than one super, perhaps move them off together. But if you're on your own, then obviously it's better to do them one by one, because they can get quite heavy.
Yeah.
But there's only one on this one, so I'm going to leave the crown board on top for now.
Okay.
Just cracked it open, and I'm just going to put that there. The crown board will keep the bees covered in super. They're quite happy. It stops them flying up, but it also limits the possibility of robbing occurring. So we have a queen excluder over the brew box. We'll take that off, turn it upside down and carefully look to make sure the queen's not there. And you can stand that at the front of the hive, or more convenient today just to put it on top of the crown board like that, so we've got plenty of space to work.
Okay.
Now it looks as though we've got a dummy board in this colony, so we're going to take that out. Again, that's empty. We can stand that just at the side of the hive. There's no bees on there. And then I'm just going to slide the frames across so that I'm working directly in front of myself. Okay. It's just easier than stretching across.
Right, okay. Do you always do that then? Is that your...
My hives don't tend to have dummy boards in, because they don't actually fit in the sort of hives I have. Okay. So I would tend to just lever the end frame to give a little bit of space, and then take the end frame out. So if you don't have a dummy board, you'll take that end frame out, check that the queen's not on it. It's just a frame. Actually, it's a frame of part drawn foundation in this hive, and it's drawn out and filled with a little bit of nectar stroke honey on the other side. So where to put that? Well, you might have some hangers that you want to use, which you could put the frame in, or if you've got some hard standing at the front of the hive and the entrance is a bit lower than on this hive, you could just stand the frame at the front of the hive, and then if you had missed the queen by any chance, she's not likely to come to any harm. She might even just walk up the frame and crawl back into the hive. But as we've checked this frame thoroughly, I'm just going to stand it on the hive stand next to the hive for the time being.
Okay.
So that gives us a nice bit of space to work. We must always be inspecting the colony with the frames parallel to you, not perpendicular. If they're perpendicular and you try and lift them up, you're going to squash bees, because you just can't lift up straight reliably.
Yeah.
So ease the frame out with your hive tool into the space and then pick it up. Now we've got brood on this frame, so we need to start looking at these straight away. And if you look at that frame, there's not too many bees on there, but imagine a frame with more bees on. You're not going to be able to see the brood properly.
Yeah.
So it's important doing a disease inspection to actually shake the bees off.
Yeah.
To do that, put your fingers underneath the lugs and thumbs on top. Lower it down into the brood box so your hands touch the sides. Just lift it up 2 or 3 inches and just 1 or 2 short, sharp shakes. That's all that's required. So a couple of shakes like that, and you've dislodged the majority of the bees off the frame, and you can now see the brood clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we've got sealed brood and we've got unsealed brood, and both are of interest because we're doing a disease inspection looking primarily for foul brood disease. American foul brood, which affects the sealed brood, and European foul brood, which largely affects the unsealed brood.
Okay.
So we look at the cappings for the sealed brood and check that they're a uniform colour, that there's not too many mist pepper pot brood pattern, sometimes it's called, mist cells, and we check that the surface of the comb is slightly domed or convex, no sunken cells or perforated cappings.
Okay.
If we had a lot of empty cells on there, we'd also check those to make sure there's no scale in them.
Yeah.
And the best way of doing that is to hold the comb at that sort of angle with the light coming over your shoulder so that you can see down into the bottom edge of the cells. And the scale would reflect the light and be visible, even though it can be quite dark, almost black, very dark brown scale. So as I've been doing that, I've been looking at the brood altogether, making sure that there's no problems with the cappings, and also checking the unsealed brood to make sure that the larvae are pearly white in colour, curled up in a C shape in the bottom of the cell.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't normally take me that long, obviously, to do one frame, but talking about it.
So with that number of missing ones on that frame, that's nothing to worry about then?
No, you have to look inside and decide why the cells aren't or don't contain a larva or aren't capped.
Yeah.
And it might be that there's pollen been stored in that frame and the bees haven't cleared that out, so the queen can't lay in those cells. It might be with the new frame that the queen hasn't laid on top of the wires, and so you can get some zigzag lines, or straight lines if you've got vertically wired foundation. If there's a lot of missed cells and there's no sign of any disease, then you've got to think perhaps that perhaps the queen isn't laying particularly well, or she's laying perhaps some a proportion of unfertilised eggs, and the bees are clearing those out. And so you're getting a patchy brood pattern. So they're all things that you can look for along with the foul brood, and also you'd be looking for perhaps other minor brood diseases such as sac brood or chalk brood, perhaps also any effects of varroa on the colony which could affect the brood, and as I've just mentioned, perhaps a failing queen giving a poor brood pattern. So all those things you'll notice as you do a brood inspection.
Okay.
Now, as I said before, it's not actually necessary to find the queen. and you don't want to spend too long doing that because it will distract you from the primary objective. So it's better just to carry on taking the frames and shaking majority of the bees off and inspecting those. And don't get too worried if you see a cell that's got a slight, what could be a perforation in it. It's not just brood that might be under there. That one there that I've just taken the rest of the capping off actually had nectar underneath and they hadn't fully sealed it.
Okay.
There's one here where they're just sealing the larva.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's a brood cell. The larva's fine in there. You can just about see it underneath.
Yeah.
And you've got one there that's looks as though it's a drone.
Yeah.
That hasn't been sealed properly yet.
So that one seems to have a lot more gaps in it than the previous.
It does have some.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be too worried at that sort of percentage.
Okay.
So again, just have a good look at all the brood on each frame.
And so with the shaking, you're not then worried if you had the frame that did have the queen and she gets shaken off?
No, she'll just drop in with the other bees to the bottom
Yeah.
of the hive and then climb back up onto an adjacent frame.
Yeah.
You could check quickly to see if the queen's there, if you want, but I say it's better really just to get on. Now we've got some hatching brood here. You can see the bees actually
Yes.
chewing their way out of the cappings,
Yeah.
and this brood pattern is quite a lot better than the previous frame. So again, it's as I say, it's not too much of a concern. There's also eggs in this frame, and you can see here I was mentioning the queen not laying on the wires.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can see those zigzag patterns,
Yeah.
so that's nothing to worry about. And there's no sign of any varroa damage either to the brood or the bees
Okay.
that I can see on there. The bees are clinging on quite firmly today because it's a little bit cool.
Yes.
Sometimes just one shake is all you need.
Uh-huh.
Now there's a good amount of unsealed brood on this frame, so it's a very good frame to examine for European foul brood. And you can quickly scan over it and check that there's no cells with larvae that are distorted or discoloured.
Yeah. It can be quite difficult to look for, can't it? EFB.
It can in its early stages if there's only a few cells
Yeah.
affected, but it's something that you do get used to looking for
Sure.
with practice. Again, as I say, you could just check for the queen if you want. If you were scared about shaking her, you could take her off and put her onto a frame that you've already inspected.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she won't come to any harm. Just shaking the bees like that into the bottom of the box. Again, a nice new frame that the queen's been laying in, and zigzag pattern of the wires showing clearly on one side particularly. Now we do have one cell here which looks to have chalk brood in it.
Right.
What I usually carry in my bucket, and another one there actually, and one here. With chalk brood you can also get perforated cappings as the bees uncap the cell if the larva has died after sealing, as in this case here. So just ease that back and you can clearly see then that it's chalk brood. You can see the white mummy with the yellower head
Okay.
sticking up out of it. And what's useful to carry in your bucket is a pair of tweezers,
Right.
because you'll be able to just pull that out
Yeah.
and have a look at it.
Yeah. So at this time of year, would you expect to see chalk brood, or would you
Not
have thought it would have?
Particularly, it usually clears up by about this time.
Okay.
some bees seem to be more prone to chalk brood than others. It's probably a genetic thing. Got a nice young bee just there.
Yeah.
That's still downy in appearance.
Yeah.
Just hatched out. And again, sealed brood with just a few unsealed cells. And one there, again that's chalk brood with a perforated capping. So you're looking for anything that's unusual or not looking quite right.
So if you saw any of the cells with a perforated capping, would you always investigate each one?
If you're unsure what it is, I mean, I wouldn't have needed to open that one because I knew it was chalk brood. I could see the chalk brood larva without opening it.
Yeah.
But if you're unsure, then it doesn't do any harm just to ease the top of the capping away and have a look. We're coming to the end of the brood nest by the looks of things here because this frame's very light and it's unsealed brood. Now this frame's a good example where you can see that with all those bees on, you can only see a few of the cells. So you need to shake the bees off to be able to see those larvae, because European foul brood might start with just one or two larvae affected. And if you don't spot those early, then of course the disease can get worse. So shake those off, and now we can see clearly there's a large patch of unsealed brood on this side of the comb, which is fairly well distributed. There's not too many missed cells apart from on the wires, and it all looks perfectly healthy.
Right.
If it didn't look healthy, then, and you suspected European foul brood, or if a cap cell you suspected American foul brood, you must contact the bee inspector to come and confirm, and he will do or she will do a lateral flow test, which everybody will probably be familiar with now. But they're working very much the same way as the COVID tests, and we'll do one, come back and do one from that frame just to explain how to do it in a moment. We'll just finish off the inspection. Looking at that end frame there, looks as though it's largely honey and pollen, so that's fine. And then we've just got this colony is still building up. We've got 2 sheets of foundation in there, so we don't need to look at those. So here we have a kit, a lateral flow device, which I shall open and put out the various parts. You've got an instruction leaflet, you've got a little spatula to help you get the larva out of the cell, or the remains of the larva out of the cell. You've got your little bottle of buffer solution, a lot more than you get for a COVID test.
Yeah, you do.
and a little dropper.
Okay.
And this is the slide, which is in a sealed sachet. So we take that out, and it's got a little well for the sample, and this is the reading cell alongside. So we're just going to put that down on the side there, and we'll go back and imagine that we've found a larva on here that is unnaturally placed in the cell, or it's beginning to go discoloured. Then the way we do it is just to take that larva out with the little and everything blows away.
The test is still there. Actually, it's just the leaflet that's blown away.
So we get the larva out and we put that into the kit. Make sure that's in there. Put that frame back in, keep it warm. And then I'm just going to leave that there for the moment while I just reassemble the hive, just so that everything is kept nice and warm.
So you put one larva in the one.
You only put
test.
one in.
Yeah. Okay.
If you put more than one in, you can overload
Right.
the kit.
And would you recommend that ordinary beekeepers get lateral flow tests as part of their equipment?
Not really, because they do tend to go out of date fairly quickly, so you might never use it.
Sure.
This, in fact, is one that's out of date.
Yeah. Right.
So that's fine for a demonstration.
Because I noticed you can buy them, can't you?
You can buy them, yes. Yes. So you shake the kit for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That macerates, there's some ball bearings in there, and it macerates the remains of the larva and releases the bacteria.
Okay.
Just putting the spatula inside there so that it keeps it free from any bees.
You don't want it to go anywhere else in your apiary, do you?
Exactly.
If you've got EFB.
Right, so we've shaken that to distribute the bacteria in the liquid. We take a sample with the pipette and we put 2 to 3 drops on the well, put the rest back in, do that up, and again put the rubbish back into the packet, and it takes 2 or 3 minutes for the test to respond.
Yeah. So it looks just like a lateral flow test that you do for COVID, or a pregnancy test. In fact.
It's based. They're all based on the pregnancy test kit type of thing. Yes. Yeah. So I'd normally put that on an adjacent hive.
Okay.
Top, so that we can get this hive back together.
Yeah. They behaved quite well, didn't they?
Yes, they're fine. They didn't really need any smoke.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of smoke there to get the bees off the top bars so they don't
if
squash
you had
them.
sort of brood and half, what order would you do it in then, or if you're double brood or something like that?
Very good point. What I would do if I've got a brood and half or double brood, I would take the top box off,
right,
and examine the bottom box first.
Right. Okay.
Because if you're shaking bees, you don't want to shake all the bees from the top box into the bottom box and then reshake them.
Yeah.
So you examine the bottom box first,
right,
and in that way you keep the bees enclosed in the top box.
Yeah.
So they're less of a problem anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
What you must always do if you're taking an excluder off and putting it on top of the super, for example, if I'd taken the supers off and then decided to put if it's on double brood, the top box on top of there, if I take that queen excluder off and turn it upside down, then it will be all right to put the half box or the second brood box on top.
Okay.
But
because your queen won't go down.
That's right. Yeah. You don't want to risk the queen being on the underside of that excluder and moving it across to the supers.
Yeah.
And if you have it the other way up, if she goes down there, if she's in the top box and she goes down onto the excluder, when you put it back, you put it the right way up.
Yes.
And so she goes back into the brood box.
Yeah. I find the shaking quite difficult because I seem to bang it against the inside of the hive sometimes.
Yeah, that's why you only lift it up that little bit.
Yeah.
And then a couple of just really sharp, short shakes.
Okay.
No need to lift it right up and really go down a long distance.
Okay.
Just a couple of short shakes. Sometimes just the one is sufficient.
Yeah.
So while we've been talking, that should have worked, and just to get the instruction leaflet out, because I think it might show you the no, it doesn't on there, on the back of the packet it shows you what you should see. Now this is an old test kit, so it's out of date, so it's not actually working properly. But if you get one line that's above the C, then that means that's a control, C for control, and one line just shows you that the kit's working.
Yeah.
If you get two lines, then you've got a line under the T as well as the C, then that shows a positive result.
Okay.
And that's a confirmatory test of foul brood. And you have a separate test kit for either American foul brood or European foul brood.
Okay. So positive means it's positive that the bacteria are there.
That's right.
It's actually
yes.
a negative for you, isn't it? And the bees, as a beekeeper, you don't want it to be positive.
That's right. You're much happier if there's just one line that shows the kit's worked and it shows a negative result.
Yeah, yeah.
But unfortunately, it does happen that you get positive results and two lines. So if you're keeping bees in an area where there's disease been reported, then it's probably a good idea to do an extra check of your bees at that time.
Yeah. So if you hear, you would hear maybe by an email from the National Bee Unit, or
yeah, as long as you're registered on BeeBase, then if there's a disease outbreak within 3 kilometres of your apiary, you will get an email to alert you.
Yeah.
And requesting that you check your bees.
Okay.
So you should do that even if you've already done a disease check earlier in the year.
You hear, don't you, that beekeepers are one of the main ways that disease can get spread, either between hives in one apiary or from another beekeeper. What's the best ways to ensure that doesn't happen?
Well, good apiary hygiene is paramount. So that means keeping everything clean for a start. So it's a good idea to be able to use disposable gloves because those can be washed in between each hive if necessary, and they can be disposed of at the end of that apiary inspection.
Yeah.
Keep your hive tools and if you've got an uncapping fork, tweezers, things like that, in a bucket with strong washing soda solution.
Yeah.
I go a bit above that. I tend to put a squirt of bleach in as well,
right? Okay.
which is fine with washing soda, but don't mix bleach with anything that might be acidic.
Okay.
But washing soda and bleach works okay.
Yeah.
And I find it just keeps everything that little bit fresher. So keep that to hand, so you can wash your hive tool, wash your gloves, and make sure it's spotlessly clean and sterile for the next colony.
Yeah, sure.
Don't leave wax around.
Yeah.
So if you scrape a bit of brace comb off the top bars, have another bucket with you in which to put any pieces of wax.
Yeah.
Wax is actually valuable stuff, and being from Yorkshire, we ought to keep that and make use of it.
Yes.
Even if it's only for trading in for foundation. Yeah. But of course, nice wax like that, nice fresh comb. Melt that down and clean it up, and make some lovely candles or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So so keep your bits of wax. Yeah. They're valuable. Make sure you launder your suit regularly. Particularly if you're going into somebody else's apiary, you should have it freshly laundered.
Yeah.
And it also helps keep the bees quiet, because eventually, of course, you might get stings around the veil or something like that, and the bees will sense that if you go into the apiary smelling of that pheromone, then that can agitate the colonies.
No, it's not a good smell, is it, for them? Or dead bees, they don't like the smell of, do they?
No.
So when would you recommend that we do disease inspections?
In an area where you don't have disease notified regularly, then probably twice a year would be sufficient.
Okay.
Once earlier in spring, perhaps before you start to become concerned about swarm preparations, and again later towards the end of the summer, early autumn.
And you should specifically focus on disease in that inspection rather than anything else.
Yes, you don't want to be distracted by looking at other things. Yeah. So hopefully by the time you do your disease inspection in spring, you've been through 1 or 2 times already. You've marked your queen, you've got everything sorted for the hive, taking out old combs and replace them and so on.
Yeah.
And you can concentrate just on the brood combs.
When you were doing this inspection earlier on, you mentioned about looking for signs of varroa's effect on either the brood or the bees. So which things would you be looking for?
Cells that are where the pupa hasn't developed properly. The bees might have started to uncap that cell, and you can perhaps see a poorly developed pupa, or even a young bee that's died as it's emerging.
Right. Okay.
Which can be a sign of varroa damage.
Right. Okay.
The bees themselves, of course, you might notice deformed wing virus.
Yeah.
Or perhaps a bee with stunted abdomen.
Right.
And there are indications again. You might even see a varroa mite walking around either on the comb as it goes around the cell looking for a new larva to feed on.
Thanks ever so much, Ivor, for coming over and demonstrating that for us. It's really useful, and we're hoping that we get the video organised so that we can share that with everyone in the Yorkshire Beekeepers Association, get it up on the website, and it'd be a really useful video for people to watch.
Thank you very much.